the world was seconds away from ending. Dozens of times. Not once, not twice, but repeatedly. While people went to work, children played in the streets, and leaders spoke about peace. Fingers hovered over buttons capable of erasing entire cities from the map. And no one was warned. The Cold War was not merely a political conflict. It was a silent experiment to determine how far humanity could go without destroying itself. And the cost of that experiment is still being paid. As the 20th century reached its midpoint, the planet emerged devastated from the greatest war in human history. Cities lay in ruins, continents were traumatized, millions were dead, and a fragile consensus prevailed that such destruction must never happen again. But history rarely grants second chances without interest. From the ashes of the Second World War arose two forces that did more than rebuild the world. They reshaped it in their own image. On one side stood the United States, championing a liberal capitalist system that promised prosperity through markets and individual initiative. On the other stood the Soviet Union, promoting a state-controlled socialism that claimed to be the only true path to equality. This was not simply a struggle for power. It was a struggle for the future of humanity itself. The Cold War began without opening shots, without formal declarations, and without a precise starting date. It crept slowly into diplomatic decisions, political speeches, and the daily lives of ordinary people. The planet was divided not only by physical borders, but by opposing narratives about progress, freedom, and justice. Each side believed that compromise was equivalent to extinction. Fear became official policy. The atomic bomb, first used in 1945, transformed human conflict into something irreversible. For the first time, civilization possessed the means to annihilate itself entirely. Stability was no longer maintained by victory, but by mutual threat. This balance was given a technical name: mutually assured destruction. A clinical phrase for an apocalyptic reality. No one would press the button because everyone would die. Yet living under this logic meant accepting that the end of civilization was always one mistake away, one misunderstanding away, one faulty alarm away. And mistakes did happen. False alarms sounded, the wrong aircraft were identified, misinterpreted data nearly triggered irreversible consequences. The world survived not because of flawless systems, but because of human decisions made in seconds, often by unknown officers who chose to question automated orders. The Cold War was preserved not only by presidents and generals, but by individuals who decided not to press the button. While the superpowers avoided direct confrontation, much of the world became their battlefield. Newly independent nations, fragile and unprepared, were pulled into one camp or the other. Governments fell. Dictatorships rose. Guerrilla movements were armed. Civil wars stretched on for decades, from Korea to Vietnam, from Afghanistan to Central Africa. Local conflicts were inflated by global ambitions. Millions died not for their own causes, but for imported ideologies. These wars did not end when the Cold War ended. They left behind shattered states, dependent economies, militarized societies, and deeply traumatized populations. When superpower support vanished, the vacuum was filled with chaos. Warlords, extremism, arms trafficking, and endless cycles of violence took hold. The end of the Cold War did not bring peace to these regions. It brought abandonment. Within the superpowers themselves, another consequence quietly solidified: the militarization of the human mind. For decades, fear was normalized. Children were taught to hide under desks in preparation for nuclear attack. Films, books, and news broadcasts reinforced the idea that an enemy was always watching. Vigilance became a virtue. Suspicion became a necessity. Governments expanded their powers. Intelligence agencies grew. Civil liberties were redefined in the name of survival. When the Soviet Union collapsed, many believed this mentality would fade. It did not. It adapted. The structures built to confront a global enemy were redirected toward new threats: terrorism, organized crime, internal dissent. The surveillance state did not emerge in the 21st century. It is a direct inheritance from the Cold War. Technology was one of the greatest beneficiaries of this silent conflict. The space race put humans on the moon. Secure communication needs contributed to the birth of the internet. Satellites, computers, nuclear energy, and unprecedented scientific advances emerged under the pressure of rivalry. But this progress was never neutral. It was guided by military strategies and geopolitical interests. Even today, much of technological innovation traces its origins to defense projects. The Cold War taught the world that whoever controls technology controls the future, and that race never ended. The global economy was also deeply shaped by this division. A world split into economic blocs produced incompatible systems. When the Soviet bloc collapsed, millions were abruptly thrown into a capitalist reality for which they were unprepared. Industries vanished overnight. Social safety nets collapsed. A new economic elite rose rapidly, while much of the population sank into poverty. This shock left deep resentment, especially in Eastern Europe and Russia, resentment that continues to influence global politics today. With the end of the bipolar conflict came something unexpected. The world lost its central narrative. For decades, nearly everything could be explained through the logic of the Cold War. With two clearly defined sides, chaos felt manageable. When that axis disappeared, an ideological vacuum emerged. Nationalism, religious fundamentalism, and populist movements rushed to fill the space left behind. The 21st century did not inherit a peaceful world. It inherited a fragmented and disoriented one. Culture itself had been weaponized during the Cold War. Film, music, literature, sports, and art were all used to project power and moral superiority. This left a lasting legacy, the understanding that controlling narratives can be as powerful as controlling territory. Today's information wars, disinformation campaigns, and digital culture battles are direct descendants of that logic. The Cold War proved that winning minds could be as decisive as winning battles. Even borders drawn or frozen during that era continue to bleed. Korea remains divided. Tensions in the Middle East echo alliances forged decades ago. Eastern Europe still stands between a Soviet past and an uncertain future. The Cold War did not resolve territorial conflicts. It postponed them, and postponed conflicts tend to return with greater force. The promised peace, dividend of the post-Cold War world, never fully arrived. Military spending did not disappear. Strategic alliances did not dissolve. Distrust did not fade. Instead, the world entered a new era of competition, more diffuse, more complex, and harder to define. Conflict is no longer fought solely with tanks and missiles, but with data, influence, economics, and technology. Perhaps the most overlooked consequence of the Cold War is this. It redefined what humanity considers normal: living under constant threat, accepting surveillance in exchange for security, dividing the world into us and them. It shaped generations conditioned to coexist with the edge of catastrophe, believing that fear itself was stability. The 21st century is not the opposite of the Cold War. It is its inheritance. The structures remain. The lessons remain. The wounds remain. And while the world believes it has moved beyond that conflict, it continues to repeat its patterns in new arenas, with new technologies, and with the same ancient ambitions. Because the Cold War did not end when the last wall fell. It ended when it stopped being recognized. And in the next chapter of this story, we will explore how this silent conflict is being reenacted today, not with visible nuclear standoffs, but with influence, information, and invisible power, in a new Cold War that many still refuse to see.